What up, everybody? Hey, welcome to another Moving the Military podcast. Hey, I'm co-founder, co-host Matt Grudel, and as always, I'm with the hostess with the mostest, the co-founder, my friend, the co-host, Dina Watson. Dina, man, what are you feeling today? How's it? We're kind of matching. We got some green going on.
I feel like the last couple of weeks we've shot videos that were going to be recorded. We realized when we came on video that we were wearing similar colors. So I think this is a perfect, here's what I'm thinking. I think the delta between your version of green and mine explains our personalities
I
perfectly.
think so too.
Yeah.
I am the tactical, in your face, brute force and ignorance, feral side of the green, and you're the bright and the shining and the neon and the inviting and the lighthouse style of green. And I think that's what makes us so good.
I know. I know. Okay. Well, we're going to go ahead and jump right in. This week, we are talking about all the different variations of freedom in real estate because we've all had things go on in life where we weren't exactly able to be where we wanted when we wanted. And a lot of people get into real estate because they feel like it's this ultimate path to freedom, but I don't know that everybody understands the depths of the types of freedom that you get when you get into this business, some of which are good and some of which are detrimental to people as they figure it out. So we're kind of just going to explore. What we have realized on this podcast is when we super overscript things, it doesn't work out well for us. So since this is our podcast, we're going to do it the way we want to. And we've come with a topic that's been important over the last few weeks to both of us, and we're just going to navigate it. We're going to strap on the backpack with Dora the Explorer and go exploring. So
That's it. And I think we'll start it this way. Most of us, if you're watching this right now, you're listening to this and you're a military affiliated individual and you got into real estate, a lot of us got into real estate for freedom. And I'm just going to start there. We got into real estate for freedom, right? Freedom of time, freedom of finances, freedom of location. And I love to say it this way: the freedom to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, where you want, and give what you want. That's why we got into real estate, was our desire to find that freedom. And that level of freedom, it's everywhere in real estate. And yet, I love to say it, freedom isn't free. And a lot of us think that it is, and yet we're going to kind of go the different side on what benefits the freedom gives you.
yeah, so I wrote down the 4 types of freedom just so that we can stay focused on this conversation and not go too squirrely. But we're going to go ahead and give those to you up front, and then we're going to navigate through each one. So the 4 types of freedom in business, in most cases, is freedom of time, freedom of money, which Matt says finances, freedom of location, and freedom of choice. Freedom of time, money, location, and choice. And what we know to be true is that most people don't actually define what type of freedom they're after. They just say, I want freedom. My husband's in that bucket right now. He's going to retire in a couple years. And when I ask him, what does he want next? He's like, I just want freedom to do whatever. And that can be the most dangerous place for somebody to go, especially in an entrepreneurial venture. And so we're going to divide out these 4, and we're going to talk about how real life scenarios on how that's impacted us over the years. And let's talk about the freedom of choice, because I think that that's the one that people start with, especially veterans coming out of service. They just want freedom to choose because you've not been allowed to choose anything for a
Yeah.
long time.
I just want to choose what I'm wearing. I just want to choose what I'm eating. I just want to choose what I'm doing. I just want to choose when I'm waking up. I just want the freedom to be able to choose again. And yet, man, that can be paralyzing.
Well, let's talk. I'm going to let you take that one because I never went through that. I came out of college and went straight into real estate, so I never had the unlearning of habits and things like that. So let's talk about the pro side. What are the pro? We'll do the pros and the cons for each. So what are the pros in the freedom of choice bucket for people who actually choose to make real estate a business?
Decisions, the freedom to make decisions that benefit you, or the freedom to make decisions that are solely your decisions. I really do believe that the pro part of it is you make your choices and your choices make you in regards to that. So it's the freedom that we crave to be able to make a decision that impacts us, that we've made, that no one has forced upon us, that's not in a box that we have to do. So it's that level of freedom. And I would say it is choice, but it's also decision, being able to make decisions for myself without the weight of what it impacts everybody else behind us.
Let's di I'm writing because I think I'm gonna we're doing this in real time. I think I'm gonna host this one.
Yeah.
All right. So let's break it down for the people at home. As you've navigated your way through this for the last how long? 6 years?
Yeah, without a
6 years?
doubt. Yeah. I mean, I retired in 2015, so I've been in
No,
real
I
estate
mean real estate. Yeah.
5 years, 6 years.
5. Okay. So take yourself back to 5 years ago when you weren't out of the service into real estate directly. You went through Glass and some other companies. But when you got into real estate and you were like, okay, this is going to give me the ultimate freedom of choice. If you go back to where you were at that point, if you could remember, what were the choices that you had to make decisions around? Because there's so many little bitty ones that people glaze over all of them. They're like, I just want to choose. Well, what were those impasses of choice that you had to make?
I'll go a very simple one. What am I going to wear? Right? And I'll make that simple. My uniform, right? Because it's funny, I went from a job where my name was on my shirt to a job where my name was on my shirt. I did. I went from literally a job, and I thought I was going to be destined to always have a job with my name on my shirt. I mean, my name's on my shirt now, Farrell, but I
That's fun.
went from a uniform with Grudel on it, and then I went into large scale commercial construction. I was a project manager building things. And once again, I had a logo and my name on my shirt. So the first was the freedom of choice to wear kind of what I wanted to wear. And I'll be honest with you, is one of the things that impacted my decision was like, man, I just want to be able to choose what I want to wear when I want to wear it.
Okay. So then you decided, we'll go into the choices, options, decision filter later, but your first choice that you had to make was what you were to wear.
Yeah.
What was the next choice you were looking for freedom in?
Schedule. I schedule time. You think about it, when you think about freedom of choice, and I know that's freedom of time, but the choice to be able to decide if I'm working this weekend, if I'm showing up, where I'm showing up, what I'm doing for lunch, like all those different things. I went from a strict, structured, this is when you eat chow, to man, I'm on the project sites.
So
This is
you
when
were
we
like,
all break
so
to eat chow.
So you were like, and the reason we're breaking this down so much, you guys, is because these are all the micro rebellions that can actually cause you to succeed or fail miserably in real estate. Like the more that you lean into, I just want to choose everything and like be totally in control. As you're new into the business, this is actually why a lot of people fail. But as you learn yourself and you learn the industry, you then go back into this rebellion of wanting the freedom again so that you can do other things, which is where we are fast forward to today. So we want you all to think through this through the lens of these are all the landmines you're about to step in as a veteran coming out of the service and into real estate where you have to navigate all these things. So the freedom of schedule, you wanted to be able to show up whenever, leave if you want to, come back if you want to. What else was in that bucket? What was the schedule rebellion?
Being so like not being able to move anything. Like literally, if you go back to your time in service, like literally PT is this time, call is this time, motor pool closeout this time, right? And then you go back to when I was large scale project management of Glass. Man, we started this time, the site shut down this time, the whistle blew, we ate lunch at this time, right? I was looking for the choice to be able to say, okay, well, if I want to move this on my schedule, I can. Like if I'm really not in the mood to do this thing right now, I want to be able to
Hungry, I
shift.
don't want to eat.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't want to be locked down to lunches, chow is every day at 11:30. Like I may not be hungry at 11:30 anymore. I might want to eat at 1 o'clock. Right. So the freedom of choice and being able to control the choices and the things. And here's the other thing too. Freedom of choice is what am I putting on my calendar? I get to choose now what goes on my calendar and where I spend my time. I
Okay.
didn't have that before. Now I have it. That was a level of freedom I was looking for is where am I actually going to spend my time? Where can I now choose to spend my energy when I never had that before? That's a level of freedom that once again can be paralytic because you're like, okay, what do I do? No one's telling me what to do. I get to control my own calendar now. I get to
You're
make
right
my own
there
choices.
right
What do I
now.
do?
You're there right now.
I know I'm there right now. I created all this freedom on my calendar and I'm like, what do I
Damn.
do?
Yeah.
Dina, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. Well, I was there a few months ago, so I have empathy for you. Okay, so you were looking at uniform, here are the choices that we have freedom to make. Uniform, schedule, what was next? What was the next choice you were looking for freedom around?
The people in my environment.
Ooh,
Looking to
sure.
choose the people in my environment, like having the freedom to choose that, like literally go back to service. There is no freedom in choosing who's in your environment. People just come, people go. That's the transition. That's what you deal with. When you get into large scale project management, glass, aluminum, like I was into, hospitals, I built every target, all those different things. Once again, I don't have a choice around the people I'm in because these are the GCs, these are the supers, these are the crews, these are the people you have. In real estate, you have the freedom to choose who you're going to spend time with and whether you want to spend time with them at work during the day.
I think most people believe that they have that choice.
Oh, they don't. They don't think so. They think they're stuck in the same rut, but yet you get to choose
I
who's
mean
in your circle.
even with clients, like, I hear this a lot. People are like, "This person's abusive to me, they're verbally abusive," and I think to myself, "Why are you working with them?" And I've even asked people recently, "Well, then why don't you fire them?" "I can't." And I'm like, "You work for yourself. Yes, you
Yeah.
can." Like, I
Well,
don't
I think Dina, it's and for everybody listening, you get to choose who you work with, right? If you think about freedom of choice, when I was in the service, I had to work with this person. I needed to work with this person, whether I wanted to or not. And yet, when I'm in real estate and I have a consumer on the other end, man, if they're not a good fit, I get to choose whether I'm willing to work with them or not because this is my business. And I think the thing is, the freedom of choice, we think it's a job. It is a job, but it's a job that gives us a decision. And I think a lot of agents don't make that choice because they're in desperation mode. They feel they're going to be they're going to be let down or they're not going to make the ends meet that month because they don't have a pay coming in. And so they choose to work with people they normally wouldn't and they put themselves back in that box because I think there's a fear in saying no.
well, and I think that we also have to be careful here of, like, if you are in desperation mode and you need to feed your family, you just gotta suck it up and feed your family, like, we get that, but there's still a moment where you have to make a different decision, but we're not going there
Well, I'll
today.
go back to what I said. We get into real estate for freedom,
Mhm.
freedom of choice to choose who we work with. Yet, I'll go back to what I said earlier. Freedom isn't free. So there is going to be a time period as I grow my business, as I grow as an entrepreneur, as I go from job to business where I'm going to work with the people that are put in front of me because I have to and I need to. But as my business evolves, I paid my dues for freedom. As freedom increases, now I get the freedom of choice. So embracing the suck now gives me freedom of choice later.
Yeah, I think in the coaching world, it's called top grading. You have to top grade your roster, right? So, yeah, you might be working with some people you don't love, but the next person you bring in has to raise the average, and so I think that it's important to say. I wanna stop on something here, though, because I know that freedom to work with who you want, um, in a lot of cases in the military community, I see that agents leave the or veterans, they're not agents at the time, they leave the military, they get into real estate, and they forget that, like, the people that they feel most comfortable with are the people who are like the people who are in the service, maybe not those exact people, but they go to surround themselves with normal, we're gonna call on this podcast civilians, and then they realize, like, "I don't work well with these people." And my husband's so funny, and he probably will kill me for saying this in public, but whatever. He's working through what does he wanna do next, and I told him the other day, I said, "I know what you can't do. You can't go work in corporate America with people who feel that nothing's urgent. Like, you can't go work in a company where it's meeting on top of meeting on top of meeting because normal people don't feel right to him. Like, and I tell him this all the time. I'm like, "Dustin, you do realize this is just average people. Like, this is the 95% of the population in the world," and he's like, "I don't want anything to do with that." So I also think there's something I want you to speak to in here of, like, you have the freedom to choose who you wanna work around, but then that causes an identity crisis if we're not careful to replace it with people who feel like us in a world where we're no longer in the military. So, like, I think that's why our organization is so important, why, like, in any brokerage, the military community in that brokerage is important. Can you speak to that for a minute?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. So when I made the decision to go from construction, project management to real estate, I went into a brokerage. I was the leader of a brokerage. And the people there, even though we were next to a military installation, I went in there and I surrounded myself with the civilian populace, the people that were not like me. And I had an identity crisis because they didn't talk like me, they didn't sound like me, and I felt like I was faking the funk in what I said. Well, then the people in the organization, as I brought new people in that were like me, I was able to talk like me. I was able to be like me. I was able to say things like, hey, I'm popping smoke and going to lunch. They were like, man, I got it. The agents I was talking to, I was able to say, hey, no, I got it. I know you're dealing with that buyer. Hey, we're going to lift and shift fires to this person over here. So being able to have that identity and speak the language that I normally spoke that felt good to me, that felt normal to me, and have people around me understand really grew me and allowed me to create more freedom. But it was so hard to think, okay, I need to pair up with this person. They're the best of the best, and they're a civilian, and this is what they do. I felt so out of place, and I fought against this that I had an identity crisis of who I actually was, and I felt like I was trying to fit in. So the freedom of choice said, nope, I'm going to choose the people in my environment who I align with, and I'm going to hire the people that fit with me as well.
Yeah, I think it's the reason I bring this up and asked you to speak to it, and thank you for that, is because the initial rebellion against the military of like, I'm out, I'm going over here, and I'm just going to go do whatever I want and insert myself back home. Or, a lot of people move back to where they're from and they end up in those same identity crises. But you have to remember that that especially those of you who served a full 20 or more, you can't outrun that anymore. Like, the military is part of who you are, it's part of how you talk, it's part of how you think, and the idea that you're gonna rebel against that, and now I've got freedom to choose who I work with and all of that stuff, you can't go so far on the other side that you throw yourself into the concourse of the identity crisis of, like, now I gotta get back to the military, because what happens a lot, and we see it a lot, is when you do that and you rebel back the other way, you go straight into, "Well, I just gotta go get a corporate job," or I've got to go get a GS job or whatever. 'Cause I got to get back to my people.
Well, we pigeonhole. So here's the deal. Veterans, right? They don't look at real estate because they're like, I need to pigeonhole myself into that GS job, that clock in, clock out, that structure. I know where I'm supposed to be. I know what I'm supposed to wear. I know what I'm supposed to do because that is what we're used to. And we think it's freedom because we're making more money or we're double dipping, but literally we're putting ourselves right back in that cage. I coached somebody that did a hire the other day, and they hired they've gone through so many admins, so many assistants because they've always been civilian and they were a high level military person before they got into real estate. They finally hired somebody that spoke their language, that's military, and you should hear them talk like, no, this is the task and purposes today. This is the outcome. Hey, no, we're going to get in the breach on this one. Like, it just feels different.
Yeah. Whenever you are in line or aligned, as we like to say, with that stuff, everything that felt hard before doesn't feel hard anymore. And it kind of gives you back some mental capacity. So you wanted freedom of uniform, freedom of schedule, freedom of people. What was the other freedom of choice aspect that you were after next?
Freedom to speak.
Oh,
Freedom to speak my mind, freedom to say what I wanted to say, right? I mean, literally, like, and I'll give you this, I mean, and that can go either way. Like, people make fun of me all the time. I haven't had Facebook for like 5 or 6 years, right? Because as a CSM in the military, we didn't have Facebook. Like, you didn't put things out on social media. You didn't do those things. We had OPSEC rules. Now I'm not a social media person. It kills me to be on there, even though I'm on there. But the freedom to be able to say what I wanted to say, right? The freedom to be able to speak freely, right? That's choice. The choice to be around an environment where I can say, I mean, think about me and you, right? We have, we were in a spot where we couldn't say what we want to say when we want to say it. We made the decision to seek that next level of freedom, the freedom of choice to say what we wanted to say, right? And how we wanted to say it, to be more authentically us.
you want to know something just hit me in the. It's just, I probably shouldn't even say this. But I thought, how fucked up is it that you guys fight for everybody else's freedom of speech and you don't have it? Like, you can't say, and I mean, in some capacity, we can't either because we have to be careful for you all. And by we, I mean military spouses. Like, we're not supposed to say and do certain things depending on what our spouses do. But I'm like, it's funny that we all fight for everybody else's freedom of speech and then they kind of censor you and say, like, oh, but you can't say this.
Yeah.
It just
Well, there
popped.
was a topic. I mean, there's a topic that was around for years. I'm not going to bring it up because everybody can go different ways on it. But there was a topic. Somebody asked my opinion on something that was happening, and I said, "Here's the deal. Number one, I can't say anything, right? I can't take a stance. But man, I fought for them to have that freedom. Whether they use it in a way that I think is good or not, it doesn't matter. But I wasn't able to say anything at that point, and so." I'm looking for and if I was in a GS job, I wouldn't be able to say it either because that would be held over me, right? So I'm looking for the freedom to choice. Not that I say anything crazy or negative, but if I want to voice my opinion, I can now.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
freedom of choice.
All right. Is there any other freedom of choice aspect that you were looking for that led you into deciding that real estate was the best place for you?
No, that's it. I mean, just the fact that literally, like, here's the deal. The freedom of choice. If you treat real estate like a hobby, it's going to pay you like a hobby, and a hobby is going to cost you money. You got to make the choice to treat this like a job. So the freedom to bounce back and forth, whether how hard I'm working or how hard I'm not working.
Well, that kind of leads into the freedom of time, which is the whole reason
Woo!
this conversation came up this week was because the ultimate freedom in my mind is the freedom of time, and I say this because the two of us over the years and really like over the last 5 to 7 years have gone through a lot of things that have required us to be present for family, friends, etc. at the drop of a hat. Things that, life be lifing. Life happens and pops up no matter what you do, where you are, where you work, whatever. And I think that the ultimate freedom that real estate can give you, if you treat it like a job so it can provide you freedoms that you will never have any other way, is the freedom of time. So let's kind of dive into that. The whole
Yeah. So
point of this
when you think
conversation.
about, yeah, freedom of time. So if you go into any other job, you go into any other occupation, whether you go a GS, a corporate job, right? You have PTO days you have to take. You have I need to request 3 days off, prior to for this, or hey, I need to do a family medical leave act, whatever it is. Like you cannot just drop everything and get on a plane tomorrow. Right.
Mhm.
There are steps and systems and rungs on a ladder. Hoops you got to jump through, right, to go do these things. Real estate gives you freedom of time when you've earned it, right? And you've set up the right things for leverage. For example, my best friend, who's been fighting cancer for 6 years, like literally his wife called me and said, "You got to get here, right? You got to get here." And so I was able to drop everything and then get there, jump on a plane, get there, and then sit bedside for 3 days while he was at home hospice until he passed. That's the level of freedom that real estate can create for you once you've earned it. But you don't get that freedom of time in
Anywhere.
any other job. You
Yeah.
know, I'll go back to this. When I used to attract talent, I still attract talent. But when I attract talent at the highest level, I used to I'd set an appointment with somebody and they would be like, they'd miss the appointment, right? Or they would no show. I would just text them and say, "Hey, man, how are you doing? What's going on?" And they'd say, like, "Man, I'm sorry, Matt, but I had to pick my daughter up." And I would be like, "Never apologize for that because that's exactly where you're supposed to be. Hey, let's have a conversation on how we can increase your level of freedom so that's never a problem. You never look at that as something negative, right? Real estate gives you that freedom of time once you've earned it, right? To do what you want, when you want, where you want, to give what you want. Because the other thing too is freedom also, and we can talk about money and location, it gives you the time to be where you want to be. Like literally, I'm going to be out next week. You know that. I'm going to go to the services. I'm going to be out next week. But I have freedom to work wherever I want to work from based on my laptop, based on what I've built.
Yeah, and I'll go a little bit of I'll pull this apart a little bit because I think freedom of time is really broad. And what we essentially started with was when life happens, you have the freedom to move things around and show up for people the way that you should. And like a lot of people talk in real estate about how out of balance everything is. And I can honestly look back on the last 15 years and say that my life was out of balance because of me. It
Mhm.
wasn't because real estate did anything to me or clients did anything to me. I allowed it to just take up all the space. Like, I allowed the business to just in those moments, I don't anymore. I'm, like, actually really good at this. I allowed real estate to just my whole calendar just became bled over.
Well, it
Everything.
became your identity. You set no boundaries. You set no expectations. You just served everybody, and you got out of balance. But You are the problem.
Yeah, and a lot of people say like real estate burns you out or real estate can't do shit to you. It's an inanimate object. It's not it has no power over you. What ended up actually happening was in my pursuit to always be available, which makes no sense really because no one's ever always available. I was just always allowing this container to be wide open. The top was always open. If I had to go do something, I could, but I didn't actually take downtime. And so I think that I want to pull this apart for a minute. Real estate always, even if you haven't earned it, can give you the freedom of time. You just are sacrificing the freedom of finances, which will come next in our conversation. So I want to clear that up. Like, if you get into real estate after the service, especially those of you who have a retirement and disability, you have like the most freedom of time you will ever have because Matt throws this at me sometimes, and I checked him about a year ago. Maybe it wasn't a year ago. You were like, you said something, and I was like, motherfucker, you have a $90,000 a year retirement coming in. If you want to dick off, you can. I don't have that. I can't do that. So, no matter what, if you come out of the service and you're collecting any version of a paycheck, whether it's only disability or retirement in both, you do have the freedom to do whatever the hell you want to
Well, I
do.
think you made a really good point. So you can be a brand new agent starting out and
Mhm.
have freedom of time, yet I'll go back to what I said. Freedom isn't free. There's a cost associated with that freedom of time. If you want to be like, hey, you know what, man, I'm done serving, and freedom of time to means that I'm not going to start anything till noon. Absolutely.
Go for it.
Right? You have the freedom to do that. Yet, what's the cost associated with doing nothing till noon? And then if you have other hopes, dreams, purposes, goals, promises financially, that's going to cost you,
Yeah.
right? So there's a cost to it. There's a give and take.
Yeah, the other version of freedom of time, because I think even in this bucket there are 2 or 3 different little subsets. The other version of freedom of time is that you have the flexibility to just work whenever you have pockets of time. So, to everybody, their workday is gonna look and feel very different in real estate, so you have the freedom to choose this. You could wake up at 4 AM like you always have and work until 7 or 8, and you've put in a 4-hour workday before anybody else even woke up. And then if you want to, from 9 to noon, you can go golfing and go network on the golf course. And then from 12 to 4 until your kids come home from school or whatever, your spouse gets off of work, like Matt, that's your case, is like she comes home at what, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock? So you have a whole nother work day from 12 to 5 if you wanted to, and you lived your best life. You golfed, you worked out in the morning, and you got a full 8 hours in. But the cool thing about real estate is and you don't even need a full 8 hours, but whatever. The cool thing about real estate is that you can take instead of working consecutively, you can do 3 hours here, 2 hours there, 4 hours there, and accomplish the same thing.
Well, I talked to someone the other day about it, right? And here's the thing, and me and you've talked about this a million times. I was in a group of agents one day and I walked in there, there's probably 60 agents in there. And I said, here, you guys have choices. Like literally, like how many of you, and I said, be honest, raise your hand right now. If I offered you a $80,000 a year, 50-hour a week, Monday or 40-hour a week, Monday through Friday job, how many of you would take it? And over half the room raised their hand. And I was like, but here's the deal. You can work those same 40 hours and do double that, but no one says the 40 hours has to be from 8 to 5. It can be literally from, 4 to 7, 9 to 12. So you have the freedom to take your kids to school and do these things. And so you have the freedom to move your schedule. The other thing I think is important to talk about is time, money, location, and choice. They stack, right?
Yeah.
I chose, I made the choice to still get up at 4 in the morning. You know that. But when I'm done with the gym and sauna and meditation and reading, it's 7 in the morning. At 7 in the morning, I have no emails. They're done. I've cleared it because in between sets in the gym, I come, I use my time, the freedom of time. Every 2 minutes set, I'm checking an email, back in the gym, back and forth. So you can stack choice and time. And it's a 40-hour week if it's a job, if that's what you're doing, but it doesn't have to be 8 to 5 Monday through Friday because there's Saturdays, there's so many different things you can do.
Yeah, like for me, one of the things that is non-negotiable is that I'm there for my kids' soccer games. And, I even don't mind taking them to practice because guess what? I got Wi-Fi in the Tahoe.
Mhm.
So I show up at practice at the fields at 5. I let him go and do whatever he's doing. They practice until 6:45, and for almost 2 hours, I'm sitting in my car doing my newsletters, my marketing, my whatever else, listening to Dateline, learning what to do if I ever have an emergency in my marriage, how to get rid of him. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
But
I'm gonna have to call Dustin. I noticed you've been watching a lot of episodes of Snapped. I'm gonna tell him to check his Gatorade for antifreeze, but that's another topic.
I don't watch Snapped. It's too long to get to the point. But I used to watch Snapped. No, but the cool thing is that you can put in the time and the reps without it having to be all strung together. The other part about like the freedom of time, for example, is let's say that you are really into church and you want to go and volunteer at your church every Wednesday all day long. You
Do it.
can do that. You
Yeah.
know, there's a woman here and her name's Hannah Price. She's amazing. She is a mom of a bunch of little kiddos, and her non-negotiable was that she wanted a couple of work week days at home with her kids because she homeschools them. So anybody and everybody in her world, sellers, buyers, everybody knows she only works a couple of days a week. And she's built a business to where if you want to work with her, you're going to work with her on the days that she works. If not, you're not going to work with her. And that's her choice. But the cool thing is that it's an asset but a detriment at the same time. You can truly manage however you want your day to look. I don't start until 10 because I like slow mornings. I don't work with other people unless it's an absolute necessity past about 4 o'clock because I want to hang out with my kid when he gets home. So anyway, I think we beat that horse to death, but the freedom of time one, it's freedom of time to be present when it matters. My real estate team was the largest it had ever been when my mom went through cancer. I remember saying to everybody on my team, and I think this is why teams are important for a lot of reasons. I remember saying to everybody on my team, there was like 15 of them. And I said, if you guys want a place to work, you got to keep it afloat for the next couple of months because I'm out. I don't know when I'll be back, but I'm going to be sitting there every single day and I will still show up and answer your questions, but I'm not going to be able to be present. And that's not an option for me. So if you want a business to be a part of, I love you guys. And I've pulled my weight for you for a long time. You got to pull it for me now. And I think that that's the power of the time aspect. So the first one is freedom to be able to be there when it matters for people who matter to you, freedom to be flexible, to like do whatever life feels good for you. And then also freedom to be able to spend time with yourself doing what matters to you.
Well, I think the other thing with freedom of time too, you said it earlier in the conversation was, people think real estate burns them out. Well, here's the deal. When you have true freedom of time, there is no burnout because you have the time to do enough of the things you love. See, I don't believe in burnout because there is no such thing as burnout when you're doing enough of the things that you love to do and yet, or that you need to do in my case, where I was at last week and where I'll be at next week. But that's freedom of time. The fact that I have freedom of time to do those things. If you think about it, there's time for you not to get burnt out to do enough of the things you love. I made the choice. We made choice 3, 4 years ago, 4 years ago now, to work together. We made the choice 90 days ago or 100 days ago to continue working together, right? That choice also empowered my freedom of time because, like you said, I know I have you to depend on to carry the weight when I need it. Me and you have those conversations all the time. Matt, I'm only 60% today. I got you.
Yeah, I'm not doing it. Then the other day we showed up and you were really trying hard to get us into this podcast. And I just kept turning. I was like, nope,
Nope, not doing it.
not doing it today, guy. All right. The next one is freedom of location.
So
And
important.
yep. And then let's actually go freedom of finances first, because I think freedom of finances gives you freedom of location. Freedom of finances in real estate can seem pretty obvious. It gives you the ability to make as much as you want to make or as little as
Or as little.
Yep. And the funny part about this is that people don't realize, I'm going to take this to a strange spot for a minute. People don't realize that there's an option in the middle. There's this, if you look at any top-down report for a real estate franchise or market or whatever, you have the top 5 to 10% of people who make the majority of the money.
The
And then
heroes. Yeah, the heroes.
Well, we're not going to call them zeros. We're not in that headspace today. I know where you're going. Absolutely not. You have the top 5 to 10% of people who make most of the money and they're going all in. They're all the time. They're the ones usually yelling about burnout and whatever else. And then you've got almost everybody else who makes like very little. But the cool thing is that maybe people making very little are living their best life financially. We don't know. A lot of them are not, but some of them might be. So there's also the freedom financially for you to find your sweet spot of how much time versus how much money you want to put in. Because it's not always about making hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Sometimes, for an example, I only want to work in real estate sales about 10 to 15 hours a week. And I want to make a couple $100,000 for 10 to 15 hours a week. So my equation of time versus money is very specific. Years ago, when I was building my team, I did not even know that you had that choice. I just thought you sold and sold and sold and you had to sell everything and you had to hit all these numbers. And of course, that led to like a lot of problems for me, just being honest. But the cool thing about freedom of money is you have the freedom to make as much, as little, or as counterbalanced as you want versus the amount of time you want to spend. But
Well, I think you talked about the sweet spot there, right? So just go back to me for an example, right? Go back to Dustin in a few years. Man, I'm making somewhere between 80 and $90,000 a year in retirement and all those other things, right? And so I don't need to go sell 40 properties. I may be like, hey, you know what, man? Based on where I'm at when I'm building out my freedom number, mailbox money I want, man, I only actually need to do 12 homes. 12 homes in my market's an extra $120,000 a year, puts me at $200,000 a year. I'm living cherry. I'm not burning. So you have that sweet spot. And so you have the freedom to make as much money as you want to make,
well,
right?
or to change it up. So let's
Yeah.
say in the next 12 months, you wanted to just stack cash because you got something you want to pay
Yeah.
for. You have the freedom of like your ability to just go crazy if you'd like to and just work all hours of the day. But I think the one thing that we talk about a lot that I don't hear anybody else talk about is you have to be aware of yourself, your surroundings, and your season. Right. So the three S's: yourself, your surrounding, and your season. Because the season of life I am in right now, I'm not trying to make $1 million anymore. My season of life.
Which is funny because this is funny because we know each other so well, right? We've been in business together for a long time. Is 6 months ago, the season you were in is like, hey, what my goal is simple, Matt. I want to make a metric fuck ton of money. That's it. But as the season changed and you have the freedom to make money decisions, it's not what it is anymore. It's changed. It's
Yeah.
evolved. It's differentiated.
Yeah, and I think as purpose grows and as like, this 2 weekends ago, sat and slept in the place that like with all the other people in our group that we were like, man, we I think we went from, man, this place is beautiful to, man, I could kind of live here, but the house could be a little smaller because we were at a
Mhm.
retreat, by the way, for people who don't know that. And there were like 16 of us there. So we were in this house that was on 200 something acres, beautiful I mean, just ridiculous. And we went from, "Oh my god, this is beautiful," to, "Wow, I could live on this property, but the house is too big." Before we left, we were like, "What if we bought a retreat center like this to let us run these retreats and then rent it out?" So our dream went from, "I could rent this place," to, "How much would a couple hundred acres cost? I could live here," to, "Oh my god, I need to make about $7 million to pay for this place."
Let's
So
talk
you
about it.
can.
Free,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we stacked freedom of choice
Mhm.
on top of freedom of money that would give us freedom of time if we did this.
Yeah, and the thing that to leave on this podcast is you might go through a season of life where all you're looking to do is buy a couple hundred acres of land or a couple acres of land. And you're like, I got to make enough money so I can pay cash for $70,000 of land. Okay, cool. And then in 2 years, you might realize, oh man, I really want an in ground pool. So now I got to make $150,000 to put this in ground pool in. Cool. You've just expanded your thermostat. And then one day you may be with us at a retreat on a $5 million property thinking, I wish I could own this place, not just for me, but for other people. And you can rubber band that back and forth for decades if you want. So you can turn the throttle up for freedom of money and down
Well, I
based on
think
this.
you said something key I want to hit on real quick is you said the word thermostat. And what we see with a lot of military affiliated agents, veteran spouses that get into real estate, right? When we talk about freedom of finances, freedom of money, they kind of get stuck, right? They don't know how high they want to go because they've only made this much in their life and this is how their life is around. And so they kind of self sabotage when they get to that level versus breaking through. And so you have the ability to stay where you're at, to be comfortable, or to shoot for the stars, the moon if you want. But a lot of them kind of settle in what they've done for so long.
Well, there's multiples of that. Like they settle for what they've done and then they break through that and they make their first $100,000 ever. And then they can't figure out how to get to 200. And then normally once people figure out what I have found for myself anyway, is normally once you're pretty good in business and you've figured out how to make a couple hundred grand, 250, 300, past that it's all math. It's not really an ability or can I do this? I think at that phase people start to realize they can do it and they trust their abilities now because to make about 250,000, you're in the top 5% of the industry, maybe even the top 1%. So at that point, they hit another thermostat to the million. What you'll see is everybody's thermostat usually is set on, I want to make 100 grand. And you ask them why, they don't know. They just want to make 100 grand. And then once they hit that over and over and they break through it, then they're like, okay, I want to make 250. Well, why? Well, I don't know. I just want to make more money. And then the one after that goes straight to a million. Nobody does half a million or like, I got to make $1 million. And so the thermostat problem continues to happen as people climb. But I find that people don't realize that they could readjust thermostat back down the other direction if they want to.
But
It's
here's
like,
the other thing too. The thermostat problem continues to go on, but that's the freedom that's the problem that comes with the freedom to make as much money or the least amount of money you want. That's part of the freedom is having that financial thermostat problem, which is a good thing.
yeah. Let's do the last one because we're really long winded today. So, there are also multiple versions of freedom of location. The one that most people run off at the mouth about is like, I want a seventh level out of my business and I want the bit, and no disrespect to any of you who have ever said this. I said the same thing. And there's this elusive like level of real estate sales that people chase that almost no one ever stays at. They might touch it for a minute, and we'll talk about that. And then they have to come back in to fix the business that imploded while they were gone. But there's this idea that freedom of location has to mean I level out of the day to day of my business. And I want to park there for a little while, and then we'll come back to the more, I don't know, simple version of freedom of location later. But why do you think that is that people get into real estate and they think that it's within a short period of time most of the time, like, within a few years, they're like, I just wanna have a business that works without me, and I just wanna go and, like, be on the beach or go to the mountains or move to a new city or whatever, and I just want this thing to keep making why do so many people care about that?
I think it's because they see it on TV, they've seen all these different
Yeah.
things, they think that that's what it is, like, literally, I'm gonna work this, I'm gonna create a business, and now I get to show up when I wanna show up, I'm just gonna go do these things, and you and I know it doesn't work that way, right? There's really and I think that there's and me and you've talked about this before, there's 3 when you think about freedom of location, you think about having that ultimate there's 3 levels: job, business, empire.
Mhm.
Everybody that gets into real estate, right, is trying to get to an empire. An empire is where you have that seventh level team or you have whatever it is, and you're able to actually step out and everything runs without you, and you're just collecting the funds and coming in and out. That's so very rare, right?
It's, like,
That's so very rare.
it's even rare within the rare category,
Well, it's
like
in rare within corporate. I mean, you there's only one Elon Musk, right? You're not just going to go
but
in and
time
have
out, because Elon Musk is still very much in the day-to-day of
working.
his
Yeah,
businesses.
he's still running a business.
That's the thing, like,
Perception.
perception, yeah. So freedom of location, what it should be, what we should all be trying to get to is freedom to be able to work from wherever, not freedom to not have to work. Because the reality is, unfortunately, real estate is like so rewarding, but then so damning at the same time because you can work for 30 years as a real estate agent. You're the blue haired lady everybody talks about. But the day you step out and stop doing that, the checks turn off like almost immediately.
Well, because freedom of location in real estate evolves based on job, business, and empire, like I said. And that person that's done it for 30 years, because as soon as they had a job the entire time, and now the day they stop working, they no longer get funds.
Yeah, but so here's where I would love to reset everyone's head, but I know I can't. So I'm just going to reset whoever's sitting on here listening. I think that the ultimate win in real estate, other than the elusive, like, I own this thing that runs without me, is for 90% of people, I think the ultimate win would be that you've created something where business comes to you and you can truly go to the beach for 3 days a week if you want. You could work from home if you want. You could work from vacation if you want, or you could just choose to take a week off a month or whatever. I think that is the ultimate freedom that most people should be after is, can you create a world where your business, if you want to call it that, comes to you instead of you having to re-earn it? Because that gives you freedom to move about the cabin. It gives you freedom to like work for 2 hours today or 1 hour today or take a week every month off or whatever. But instead, what people chase and usually never touch is this idea that I'm going to build this real estate sales game that one day I'll step out of and somebody else will run. But here's what actually ends up happening. And I think here's what everyone needs to hear. Real estate is a relationship-based business. You can't have a relationship without one of the parties. Real estate is an egotistically based business. It's a local expert business. It's a local it's like a local brick and mortar without the brick and mortar. You not being inserted into the day-to-day of your business for 95% of people will make your business implode within 90 days of you stepping out of it. Which, I will say this, how you work within the business can change. I did get to a place for years where I wasn't having to go on appointments anymore, but I was still the one lead generating for the appointments everybody else was going on. My job within the business changed, but I didn't have the honor of stepping out all the way. I still had to run the Facebook groups. I still had to do the show up with my face. Like, I still had to build the business relationships, all that stuff. Most people think that your whole totality steps out of it and it continues to go, but you were the one that people had the relationship with. So even this idea that you're going to sell your database and the database will keep producing, no, it won't. No, it won't. You're going to sell a bunch of names and numbers to somebody who doesn't know these people, and its conversion is effectively that of a cold lead. It doesn't never
Well, it
mind.
goes back to
I
what
need
I
to
say.
come off the pulpit. It
Yeah, you
doesn't.
don't have a conversion issue. Most people in real estate don't have a conversion issue. They have a connection issue. And the day that you just sell that database and they are no longer connected to you,
They'll
they're
go to
not going to
somebody
convert
else.
at the same level. They're
No.
not going to do it. That's why some of the best agents out there are the ones that are doing what you're talking about, that have freedom of finances, freedom of time, freedom of choice, freedom of location. They've built a database that is so big that people are just continually coming to them, yet they're still the center of the conversation. They're still the face. They're still doing the calls. They're still connecting. And so that's how you get freedom isn't free, right? I think the other thing, I'll take it aside a little bit, is we get this, for some reason, agents think that freedom of location is, I'm going to be on the beach on my vacation, for my summer vacation, on the computer. It's not sexy. I'm going to tell you, please don't get mad at me. You taking a picture of yourself on the beach on your computer during family time, it's not sexy. It's not cool. Okay.
It's
I mean, I
stressful.
got it, but
Your
that's
priority.
not the point of freedom of time, freedom of location. But real estate gives you that ability to work from wherever you're at.
Yeah. I think that would be the ultimate win, is that we can work as much or little as we want, make as much or little as we want, work wherever we feel like sitting our laptop. If you want to work on vacation, you can. Like, the cool thing is real estate is the ultimate freedom of choice mechanism, but we don't necessarily understand what we're after because no one tells us the trade-off of what's going to happen to get those freedoms. So as we're climbing the freedom ladder, what we don't realize is that we're always trading, right? So I had a lot of financial freedom when I was in the day-to-day grind of my team, but then when I stepped out of it and I just ran the machine, I was looking for freedom of time. Well, guess what I got less of? Money, because you have to pay people for their time so you don't have to with your time. So time isn't even free, right? So when you're replacing yourself, you're paying someone else, whether it's a split or you hire somebody. And so, yes, you may have more freedom of time, but you have usually less freedom of money in exchange for that. And then you can choose freedom of location, but then you have less freedom of money. So you're not I will say this, the largest real estate team on planet Earth, the person running that thing still works in it every day. Her role is different than it used to be. She is not going on appointments, but she's still pulling a 30 to 50 hour work week in that machine because she's the one navigating the machine. So this idea that you level out of your business, you can. I know plenty of people who've done it, but almost every one of them currently is right back in that seat because when the market shifts, people's conversion skills change and they realize the ship is going down because the captain isn't calling the shots anymore and they have to jump back
Well,
in.
that person you're talking about, the largest real estate team, they went from rowing the ship to steering the ship to navigating the ship. They've just taken a different position on that ship, on that
But they
bus.
didn't abandon ship is
They
my
did,
point.
yeah, they didn't abandon ship. So, we talk about real estate, right? Real estate is the ultimate freedom giver. It's the ultimate freedom taker. And when you think about, Dina, when you think about time, location, money, and choice, I always say it comes down to choice first. When you think about freedoms, freedom of choice decides everything. You make your choices and your choices make you, right? You decide that, hey, I'm going to make the choice to not spend as much time in my business. Well, that's going to affect the locations I work from and the money I make, right? If I make the choice to go do just work from this location, it's going to affect the money or the time. And so if I'm going to make the choice to really make a metric fuck ton of money, it's going to affect the time that I have with my family. It's also going to affect my freedom of being at different locations because I'm working so hard. So when you think about the four freedoms, I think it always starts with freedom of choice. What am I choosing to do today? And how am I choosing to use, like you said earlier, how am I choosing to use my freedom?
Yeah. Yeah, I know we rambled a little bit today, but I hope this was helpful for whoever's listening because I think the ultimate like takeaway from this call, and then Matt, you can give yours and get us out of here. The ultimate takeaway I would love for somebody to have that we've unfortunately had to learn the hard way is that you're never going to get one of these things and ride it into the sunset. It's a constant trade off for different seasons of your life and in different moments within the season, too. Like, for example, with Matt's season of life was like, I'm clear, let's charge. But then a particular moment that he needed to be present for showed up out of nowhere. And it's like, okay, wait, I'm going to go over here because that's where I should be. And I'll come back to this, whatever it may look like, right? Like, same thing with my mom. I did not care if I came back and my business was to ashes because I needed to be where I needed to be. And so, what we hope everybody, or I hope, and then Matt, you give yours, everybody takes out of this is that you do have the choice, but you have a ton of choices that you're not conscious of. And they're always evolving and you're always trading. And I think that the ultimate win here is that you understand the trade that you're making because you're always going to be making one. What is your like, you hope they take away from this
I hope
ramble?
they take away from this to realize that they are in a profession that will give them everything they desire and more importantly deserve. Like you are in a profession right now, real estate, that will give you everything you've ever wanted. Absolutely, it will. But there's a cost with every decision you make, right? There's a cost that comes with freedom of time. There's a cost that comes with freedom of choice. There's a cost that comes to freedom of finances. There's a cost that comes to freedom of location. There's a cost associated. You just got to find your band of excellence to find your blueprint, your level of freedom, and how you dip into each one of those to get to where you want to be. Real estate, and me and you've said this, I think we started talking about this 2 years ago, right? Real estate is not to have real freedom in real estate. You have to realize one thing: real estate is not your identity. And number two, real estate is the fuel, the gas in your purpose bus. Wherever you're going, your purpose in life, real estate can fund it and be the gas to get you there, right? To get you that level of freedom. So embrace it. Just realize there's a cost of inaction in either one of these.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, Matt, with that, you're going to get us out of here, Flava Flav?
That's it. Hey, everybody, man, we hope you enjoyed it. Hey, here's the deal: real estate is freedom, but freedom isn't free. We'll see y'all next time.